With the news that Lombre the Voyager has been downgraded from V17 to V14, I thought it would be topical to revisit some of the most brutal downgrades the sport has seen, both boulder and lead. This list contains some of the largest grading gaps, but also downgrades that were significant for other reasons. Box therapy was initially graded V16 by Daniel Woods, who sent the project in 2018, followed by the Colorado cobbler, Druana, then Sean Bailey. The fourth ascent, Katie Lamb, then became the first female to ever climb V16. This climbing milestone lasted around 2 months before Brooke and Sean Rabitou sent the problem, Brooke suggesting a downgrade to V15. Not really on this list because of a large gap in grade, but rather because of the history behind what would have been a first female V16. As most of you know, this didn't really matter as Katie Lamb later climbed the dark side V16, becoming the first female to climb V16 for the second time. Chelam Bam was first ascended by Bernabe Fernandez in 2003. He suggested 9B+, where the hardest sport grade at the time was 9A+, meaning Bernabe skipped a whole letter grade. The route is 85 meters long, 200 plus moves, and takes over an hour for every ascent. Adam Ondra sent the climb in 2011, 8 years later, and first proposed a downgrade to low 9B, later agreeing it was likely even 9A+. The route now has over 10 repeats, where the consensus seems to be around hard 9A+. Besides the questioning of the grading, Chelam Bam was also controversial as Bernabe's first ascent lacked video evidence. This, combined with suggesting a grade past the hardest route to date, was bound to arise some suspicion. Danny Andranada reported that the upper section of the climb appeared largely untouched, with many fragile holes in place, where you would expect them to have been kicked off or broken during attempts. No Kapote only does seem to be similar to Lombre the Voyager in that it was also a first ascent by Charles Albert, and that it does seem like the barefoot ascent did impact the grade and subsequent downgrade a lot. Just like Voyager, No Kapote was suggested V17 at first. The second ascent, Ryuhei Kameyama, suggested it to be V16, where he noted, "I have a feeling Burden of Dreams is a bit more difficult." It does sound a bit sarcastic, but he probably meant it literally. Naturally, Ryuhei also did use shoes. The third ascent, Nico Pellison, also climbed with shoes and used pretty wildly different beta. Nico said that the climb was a solid V15. Even though the current sends are V17, V16 and V15, it does seem like the consensus is that with Charles beta and without shoes, it very well might be a 17, but with shoes and Nico beta, likely V15. This is also comparable to Voyager, where Pietro himself says that his and Charles' ascents are wildly different, Pietro going quote-unquote full rubber, using 4 knee pads, shoes and crack gloves. Akira is a route on an overhanging roof that starts off as a boulder problem where the climber is pretty close to the ground. It was first ascended by Fred Rowling in 1995. Rowling gave the grade of 9B, which at the time would have been the hardest grade being 9A, skipping the plus. Fred climbs using very little feet, campusing I'd say most of the moves. At the time, crash pads were basically non-existent. Some have theorized that the campus style Fred uses is likely based on that potentially taking a 3 to 4 meter fall with your legs up on the wall was more dangerous than falling while campusing. The route stood unrepeated for 25 years before Seb Wien repeated it. Seb uses different and what looks like a lot more optimized beta. He downgrades the route to 9A. What's even more interesting is that Seb chooses not to use knee pads, where the argument is that if someone were to use knee pads, the route would be even easier than 9A. It is important to note that it is likely that some of the holds have broken, making especially the first moves easier for the repeaters. That, along with Fred climbing it without crash pads, is no small feat. The boulder Dreamtime has one of the most complicated grading histories ever. The boulder is located in Switzerland, being 10 meters long with 21 moves. It was first sent by Fred Nicole in the year of 2000 and given the grade V15, would have been the first boulder of that grade. The first repeat of the boulder Bernard Sanger agreed with the V15. The second repeat, Dave Graham, used the heel hook that he thought made it V14. Sharma was next and agreed with the V14 downgrade. Then the fifth ascent was done by Christian Kaur, who said it was his hardest boulder ever, claiming it really was V15 again. The boulder got a ton of following ascents that mostly all agreed with the downgrade to V14, including Nalle, Daniel Woods and Daiko Imada. Adam Ondra also sent it at 15 years old, also agreeing with the V14. Then in 2009, the story gets even more complicated as the crux pinch breaks. The boulder gets a new post-break first ascent by Nalle, who says it is now likely V15 again. Bibliography was first suggested 9C by Alex Megos, who would have then become the second ever person to send 9C after Ondra's silence. Stefano found new beta and sent the climb a year later, suggesting a downgrade to 9B+, something that Megos later agreed with. It seems like a large part of the grade suggestion came from the time Alex spent projecting, as he had spent 16 days on Perfectamundo while Bibliography took him 60 days, so 9C seemed like a natural step up in grade. Since then, Sean Bailey, Seb Buin and Rullo have also repeated the route and confirmed the grade of 9B+. Rem is another complicated one, where the first ascent Giuliano Cameroni suggested V16. The first repeat, Paul Robinson, suggested a V14, 2 whole grades lower. Paul had found different foot beta that was for him much easier than V16. Giuliano had previously tried Paul's foot move, but believed it was much harder for him than his send beta. I think this is a great example of super nuanced body differences, so while the climbers are of similar height and wingspan, super small tension differences could change everything in a boulder. Following repeats have suggested V16, making the consensus still a 16. Iron Curtain was first ascended by Adam Ondra, who suggested 9B. Seb Wynn sent it with Kneepads, suggesting 9A+. Now, half a ladder grade downgrade is not very brutal at all. This is more just a representation climb for all the downgrades that have come as a result of Kneepads. You could also include Beginning, 100 Proof, Change. This shows that the most brutal downgrader of all time is Kneepads. The game was first suggested V16 by Daniel Woods. It would have been the first V16 in the States. The climb later got a bunch of repeats, all suggesting the downgrade to V15. Daniel later returned and agreed with the downgrade, even saying it was now a soft 15. Daniel commented on 8A. After returning back and using the new method, the game felt to be more like a soft V15 than 16. A couple of the holds have seemed to have grown in size from brushing. This new method is different from what I did, so therefore it is a different boulder problem. Before, I could not use these holds since they were not as positive as they are now. Also shout out Bruce Sau, who sent it barefoot, and Beckett Shin, who sent it at 14 years old. Such a sick boulder all around. King Cabaya and La Cabaya are both entirely different lines at the same crag in Seruana. King Cabaya was first ascended by Will Bosey in 2021, who suggested 9B+, claiming it was harder than La Cabaya, which was at the time graded 9B, then making him the first Brit to send 9B+. La Cabaya was first ascended by Adam Ondra in 2011. Now, besides the similar name and being at the same crag, they both also have in common being downgraded by Jakob Schubert. Jakob sent both routes in the same day. Jakob downgrading 2 elite level routes on the same day is insane, especially when the first ascents are Adam Ondra and Will Bosey, who are not really known for soft grades. Use code ARCHIVE if you're planning on buying something on Rungne. Not sponsored, just an affiliate link. If you want to directly support me, become a member for as little as $2.